Some of the more fascinating pieces of evidence in South America have come out recently about these channels and pathways that they've found in the Amazon that could not have been created any other way but by humans creating irrigation, humans creating grids, like a city grid.
We are taught that the Amazon was sparsely populated by primitive hunter-gatherers until recently. Small nomadic tribes wandering through endless jungle. No cities, no complex societies, no architecture. That timeline just shattered. A new expedition following magnetic anomalies deep into the rainforest discovered something impossible. A sealed chamber hidden beneath a limestone ridge. When they finally broke through the rock, the air that escaped hadn't moved in 12,000 years. Inside, they didn't find simple tools or pottery shards. They found the bones of Ice Age giants arranged like a cathedral. They found preserved seeds from plants that went extinct before the pyramids were built. They found evidence of astronomical knowledge that shouldn't have existed. The carbon dating defies every textbook. The engineering is more sophisticated than anything attributed to this region. And the message left behind changes the entire story of human civilization in the Americas. This is what they found when they opened a chamber that was never meant to be discovered. The Amazon rainforest covers an area roughly the size of the continental United States. It's a green ocean stretching across South America, dense and impenetrable. And despite all our satellites, all our modern technology, we have mapped less of the Amazon floor than we have mapped the surface of Mars. It is Earth's last gray blind spot. For over a century, explorers have vanished trying to find lost cities here. Colonel Percy Fawcett disappeared in 1925 searching for what he called the City of Z. Dozens of rescue expeditions went looking for him. None came back with answers. The jungle simply swallowed them whole. The forest grows so aggressively that it can consume a stone temple in just a few years. Roots crack through ancient foundations. Vines pull down walls. The canopy closes overhead, blocking sunlight. And within a generation, all evidence of human presence disappears beneath green chaos. This is why, for so long, archaeologists believed the Amazon couldn't support large civilizations. The soil seemed too poor, the jungle too hostile, the environment too unforgiving for permanent settlements. That belief shaped academic consensus for decades. Textbooks taught that before European contact, the Amazon held only small, scattered tribes practicing slash-and-burn agriculture. Maybe a few tens of thousands of people total, living lightly on the land, leaving almost no trace. But that consensus was built on ignorance, not evidence. We simply couldn't see through the trees. The technology that changed everything. Then came LiDAR, light detection and ranging technology. Think of it as sonar, but using laser pulses instead of sound waves. A plane flies over the forest canopy at high altitude and fires billions of laser pulses downward. Most of those pulses hit leaves and branches, but a small percentage slip through gaps in the canopy and bounce off the ground below. Sophisticated computers collect all those returning pulses and filter out the vegetation. What remains is a detailed three-dimensional map of the ground surface, as if the forest didn't exist. In the past decade, LiDAR has revolutionized archaeology in jungle regions. It revealed massive Mayan cities in Guatemala that had been hidden for centuries. It found temple complexes in Cambodia that doubled the known size of Angkor. It proved that civilizations we thought were small were actually massive. And in 2019, it revealed something in the Amazon that should not exist according to standard historical timelines. The impossible discovery. Dr. Ella Al-Shamahi, a British archaeologist and explorer, led a LiDAR survey over a remote zone along the Brazil-Colombia border. This area was classified as pristine wilderness. No roads, no settlements, nothing but unbroken jungle stretching to the horizon. When the LiDAR data came back and the computers processed the millions of laser returns, removing the digital trees, the research team went silent. The screen didn't show random hills and valleys. It showed geometry, human geometry. Perfectly straight lines ran for miles through the jungle. Raised platforms arranged in precise grids. Square plazas connected by roads. The unmistakable signature of urban planning. Nature doesn't create straight lines. Rivers meander. Hills slope irregularly. But these features were laser straight, meeting at right angles, forming patterns that repeated across the landscape. The mapped area covered over 30 square miles. That's not a village. That's not a temporary camp. That's a city. And to support a city that size, you need infrastructure. You need organized agriculture capable of producing food surplus. You need trade networks bringing in materials. You need engineering knowledge to build roads, drainage systems, and elevated platforms that won't flood during seasonal rains. According to everything taught in universities, this level of complexity shouldn't exist in the Amazon more than a few hundred years ago, and yet the lidar data was unambiguous. But the discovery that stopped everyone cold wasn't the city itself. It was what sat at the center of the urban grid. The sealed anomaly, at the base of a limestone ridge, right where the most important structures in ancient cities are usually placed. The lidar revealed a perfect oval shape. It wasn't a sinkhole. The density readings were wrong for that. It wasn't erosion or a natural cave formation. The edges were too clean, too deliberate. The rock surrounding the oval had a different chemical signature from everything around it. Spectral analysis suggested the surface had been exposed to extreme heat, far beyond anything produced by forest fires. It looked like someone had melted the rock itself to seal this structure shut. The team realized they weren't just looking at a lost city. They were looking at a vault. Something had been deliberately locked inside that ridge, protected, hidden, and sealed with techniques that implied sophisticated knowledge. The expedition shifted focus immediately. Forget the city layout. Forget the roads and plazas. The real discovery was that sealed chamber. But reaching it would require a journey through hundreds of miles of some of the most hostile terrain on Earth, and what they would find inside would force them to question everything they thought they knew about human history in the Americas. Getting to the site took weeks. There were no roads, no trails, no infrastructure of any kind. The team had to be dropped by helicopter into a small clearing, then hacked their way through dense jungle guided only by GPS coordinates. The rainforest fought them every step. Vines tangled equipment, thorns shredded clothing. The humidity was suffocating, turning every breath into work. At night, the sounds of the jungle made sleep nearly impossible. Jaguars coughed in the darkness. Something large moved through the underbrush nearby. The forest felt alive, aware, and distinctly unwelcoming. But the team pushed forward, driven by the knowledge that something extraordinary was waiting. When they finally reached the base of the limestone ridge, they didn't find the sealed door immediately. They found something else first, something that changed the entire meaning of the expedition. The mural of the ancients. One of the research assistants was clearing moss from the cliff face when she shouted. Beneath the green growth, the rock wasn't gray limestone, it was red. The team rushed over and began carefully removing the biological layer that had covered the surface for centuries. As more of the wall was exposed, they realized they were looking at a mural, not just a few handprints or simple symbols. This was a masterpiece. The painting stretched nearly 100 feet across the cliff face. The detail was extraordinary. The colors, created from minerals that still retained their vibrancy after thousands of years, depicted a world that no longer exists. And the subjects of the painting stopped everyone cold. The mural showed animals that have been extinct for over 12,000 years. There were mastodons, the elephant-like creatures that roamed the Americas during the Ice Age. There were giant ground sloths, massive animals that stood 12 feet tall on their hind legs and weighed as much as modern elephants. There were prehistoric horses, ancient camels, and saber-toothed cats, an entire ecosystem that vanished at the end of the Pleistocene epoch. The artists hadn't imagined these creatures from stories passed down through generations. The anatomical detail was too accurate. The proportions were perfect. These were field sketches, painted by people who had seen these animals alive. That meant the mural was at least 12,600 years old, dating to the end of the Ice Age, thousands of years older than any sophisticated civilization was supposed to exist in the Amazon. The impossible materials. But it got stranger. The team collected samples of the pigments used in the paintings and sent them for chemical analysis. The results were shocking. The red ochre didn't come from local deposits. The mineral signature matched sources located over 400 miles away, across some of the most difficult terrain in South America. Think about what that means. Over 12,000 years ago, these people weren't just surviving day to day. They were traveling vast distances. They had trade networks spanning hundreds of miles. They were transporting specific artistic materials across half a continent. That requires organization, infrastructure, probably specialized traders or merchants. It implies a level of social complexity that rivals ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia. But it happened in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, thousands of years before those civilizations even existed. Dr. Ella stood before the mural, trying to process the implications, and that's when she noticed the most disturbing detail of all. The animals were running. Every animal in the mural was depicted in motion, not grazing peacefully, not resting. They were running, fleeing in panic, all moving in the same direction away from something. In the center of the chaos stood a human figure, and above that figure was a symbol that made the team's astronomer freeze when he saw it. A circle with jagged lines radiating outward, a ring of fire in the sky. Next to it, scattered across the painted rock, were dots arranged in precise patterns. The astronomer pulled out his tablet and ran a star mapping program. When he compared the dot patterns to known stellar configurations, he found a match. The stars were positioned exactly as they would have appeared in the night sky around 10,800 BCE, not approximately, exactly. That date corresponds to the end of the Younger Dryas period, one of the most catastrophic climate events in recent geological history. Global temperatures plummeted within decades, ice sheets advanced, megafauna went extinct, human populations crashed. The leading theory for what triggered this disaster is a cosmic impact, a comet or asteroid fragment striking Earth, causing massive fires, blocking sunlight with debris, and plunging the planet into sudden winter. The mural was documenting that event, the ring of fire in the sky, the animals fleeing, the precise date recorded in star positions. This wasn't mythology. This was eyewitness testimony carved in stone by survivors of a global catastrophe. And the direction the animals were fleeing led straight to the sealed oval door. The message was clear. When disaster struck, when the sky caught fire and the world ended, the people who lived here ran to that chamber. They sealed themselves inside and left this mural as a warning to whoever came after. The team followed the base of the cliff, searching for the entrance, and when they found it, their equipment started malfunctioning in ways that made no sense. The sealed entrance was exactly where the lidar data predicted, a section of rock smoother than the surrounding cliff face, covered in a pale mineral glaze that looked almost like melted glass. When the team set up their instruments to scan the structure, strange things started happening. Compass needles spun wildly, refusing to point north. They'd swing completely around, then point directly at the sealed door, as if something inside was pulling them. Radio communications filled with static. Digital cameras glitched, showing strange distortions in their viewfinders. One researcher's watch stopped completely. Magnetic anomalies of this intensity usually indicate large deposits of iron or other ferromagnetic materials. But this was a limestone ridge. Limestone contains almost no magnetic minerals. Whatever was creating this field was inside the sealed chamber. Breaking the seal, the team set up ground-penetrating radar to scan behind the mineral-fused rock. The readings confirmed a massive hollow space, a chamber extending deep into the ridge. Dr. Ella gave the order to drill. They used diamond-tipped bits, expecting to break through in an hour or two. It took 3 days. The mineral seal was incredibly dense, far harder than normal limestone. It kept dulling and breaking their drill bits. Whatever had fused this rock had created something closer to obsidian glass than stone. Finally, on the 3rd day, the drill punched through, and the moment it did, everyone heard it, a hiss, air rushing out of the hole under pressure. Sealed chambers sometimes contain pressurized air, but this was different. The sound was loud, sustained, and the smell that came with it made people step back. It didn't smell like decay or rot, which you'd expect from an ancient tomb. It smelled metallic, like ozone after a lightning strike, like wet iron and electricity. It was the smell of a thunderstorm trapped in a bottle for 12,000 years. They widened the hole carefully, making sure the structure remained stable. When the opening was finally large enough, Dr. Ella volunteered to go first. She clipped into a safety harness, turned on her headlamp, and squeezed through the gap. Her light disappeared into darkness. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then her voice came through the radio, quiet and stunned. "You need to see this." Inside the chamber, the rest of the team followed her through the opening, dropping one by one into the sealed space. The first thing everyone noticed was the floor. It wasn't rough cave floor with loose rocks and uneven dirt. It was paved, smooth, level, and deliberately constructed. The paving material was terra preta, the mysterious, black earth, found in certain parts of the Amazon. Modern scientists still don't fully understand how ancient peoples created terra preta. It's a man-made soil that's incredibly fertile and never depletes. Carbon-rich, filled with charcoal and organic matter, it can sustain agriculture for centuries without fertilizer. Finding terra preta inside a sealed mountain chamber proved this wasn't a natural cave. It was an engineered structure. As their lights swept across the space, the scale became clear. The ceiling arched 30 feet overhead, supported by massive pillars made of basalt, a volcanic rock that doesn't exist anywhere near this region. It had been transported from hundreds of miles away. The architecture was sophisticated. The pillars were placed with mathematical precision to distribute the weight of the mountain above. This wasn't primitive construction. This was engineering that required advanced knowledge of structural mechanics. But what stopped everyone cold was what lined the walls. The bone cathedral. Massive curved ribs, each one over 6 feet long, were set into the floor in perfect arcs. They formed a kind of tunnel, a ribcage pathway leading deeper into the chamber. These were mastodon ribs, the bones of the extinct giants depicted in the mural outside. But they weren't scattered like remains in a graveyard. They were arranged, deliberately positioned to create a structure, like the flying buttresses of a Gothic cathedral. The sheer effort required to transport these multi-ton bones into the cave, position them precisely, and set them into the floor is staggering. Each rib would have weighed hundreds of pounds. There were dozens of them. Why? Why use the bones of extinct animals as architectural elements? What were they trying to create or commemorate? The team moved deeper, following the bone tunnel. The air grew heavier, the magnetic pull intensified, and at the center of the chamber, they found the answer. The Black Pool. A perfectly circular depression, about 10 feet across, filled with black liquid. The surface was completely still, like glass. When lights hit it, the reflection looked wrong, distorted in ways that didn't make optical sense. The liquid was thick, viscous, definitely not water. The team carefully collected a sample. Field analysis revealed it was water saturated with metallic compounds and charcoal particles. The mixture created a sterile environment, hostile to bacteria and organic decay. And floating in that black liquid, preserved for over 12,000 years, were seeds. Not fossilized, not petrified, preserved. The botanist on the team nearly collapsed when she examined them. These were seeds from plants that went extinct at the end of the Ice Age. Species that haven't existed in the modern Amazon for millennia. Medical plants, food crops, trees that once covered this region before the climate catastrophe. The team found sealed jars along the walls, dozens of them, protected with ancient wax and resin. Inside were more seeds, dried tubers, and what appeared to be carefully preserved DNA samples. This wasn't a tomb, it was an ark, a seed bank, a doomsday vault built 12,000 years ago. The people who built this place knew disaster was coming. They'd seen the signs, tracked the comet in the sky, and understood their world was about to end. So they built this chamber, created a preservation system using the black liquid and terra preta, and stored the genetic building blocks of their entire ecosystem. They were trying to save their world for whoever came after. But there was one final piece of evidence that proved how the world ended. The back wall of the chamber was covered in a thick layer of soot. Not from campfires. This was from a high-intensity blast that had scorched the rock itself. Embedded in that soot layer, visible under magnification, were thousands of tiny glass beads called microspherules. Microspherules only form under one condition: extreme heat that melts rock instantly. The kind of heat produced by cosmic impacts or nuclear explosions. These glass beads are the smoking gun of the Younger Dryas impact theory. About 12,800 years ago, scientists believe a comet fragment struck Earth's atmosphere and exploded over North America. The blast created firestorms across 2 continents, threw debris into the stratosphere, and triggered the climate catastrophe that ended the Ice Age. The microspherules embedded in the chamber wall proved the theory was real. The impact happened. The shockwave reached this far into South America. The heat was so intense it melted the rock outside, fusing the entrance shut and sealing the chamber. The extinction event. The cosmic impact explains everything. The murals showing animals fleeing. The ring of fire in the sky. The sudden extinction of megafauna across the Americas. Within a few centuries of that impact, mastodons were gone. Giant sloths vanished. Saber-toothed cats disappeared. Over 70% of large mammal species in the Americas went extinct. Human populations crashed. Entire cultures disappeared. The archaeological record shows a dramatic break, a dark age where sophisticated societies suddenly collapsed and their knowledge was lost. But this chamber proves that some people saw it coming. They had enough astronomical knowledge to track the comet. They had enough engineering knowledge to build this vault. And they had enough foresight to preserve seeds, knowing the ecosystem outside was about to be destroyed. They were trying to save what they could for whoever survived. The magnetic anomalies the team detected were coming from the basalt pillars. The extreme heat from the impact event had magnetized the rock, creating a field strong enough to affect compasses thousands of years later. Everything in the chamber was a physical record of the day the world nearly ended. The tools of a lost civilization. Near the edge of the black pool, the team found something that raised even more questions. A set of tools laid out in perfect order, as if someone had just set them down moments ago. They were made of obsidian, volcanic glass, jet black, sharp enough to cut modern surgical instruments, and flaked with extraordinary skill. But obsidian doesn't exist in the Amazon. The nearest source is in the Andes Mountains, over 1,000 miles away. Finding obsidian tools here proved something massive. A continent-spanning trade network existed 12,000 years ago. These weren't isolated tribes trading with neighbors. This was organized commerce moving materials across impossible distances. Some researchers have proposed even wilder theories. Legends from Andean cultures speak of priests using sound, specific frequencies from trumpets and chanting, to make heavy stones light. Acoustic levitation. Modern physics has demonstrated acoustic levitation in laboratories with small objects. Did these ancient people discover principles we're only now rediscovering? The pristine condition of the obsidian tools, showing no signs of being dragged or worn, makes you wonder how they were transported. But the arrangement of the tools was what disturbed the team most. They were laid out neatly, parallel to each other. A chisel here, a scraping tool there. It looked like a workshop where the craftsperson had just stepped away. But nobody stepped back in. There were no human remains in the chamber, no bones, no burials, no bodies at all. The absence of human remains is the most puzzling aspect of the entire discovery. If this chamber was built as a refuge, if people sealed themselves inside during the catastrophe, where are they? The team scanned every inch of the floor. They checked for burial pits. They looked for secondary chambers. Nothing. 3 theories have emerged, each more extraordinary than the last. Theory 1. They left. The simplest explanation is that they sealed the vault, but didn't stay inside. They preserved the seeds and knowledge, fused the entrance shut to protect it, then walked out into the dying world. Maybe they hoped to survive elsewhere. Maybe they had other refuges. Maybe they simply accepted their fate and chose to face it in the open rather than dying trapped in darkness. If this is true, their bodies are scattered somewhere in the jungle, returned to the earth, with no trace remaining after 12,000 years. Theory 2. The inner earth. Many indigenous tribes in the Amazon speak of the ant people, or the inside ones, who live in vast cavern systems deep underground. Could this chamber be just an entrance? Could there be tunnels leading deeper into the earth, connecting to a subterranean network where survivors retreated? Litter has revealed what appear to be tunnels connecting ancient sites across hundreds of miles. Some researchers believe these aren't just roads, but access points to underground systems we haven't mapped yet. If these people had the engineering skill to build this chamber, they could have built much more below. Using geothermal energy, underground water sources, they could have created a refuge that survived the surface catastrophe. It sounds like science fiction, but explorers keep finding massive cave systems in the Amazon that weren't on any map. Theory 3. The phase shift. This is the wildest theory, but it keeps being proposed by researchers who can't explain the electromagnetic anomalies. What if they didn't die and didn't leave? What if they transitioned? Quantum physics tells us there are other dimensions layered on top of our reality. Some theorists propose that this advanced culture discovered a way to shift their consciousness or even physical bodies to a higher frequency of existence. When the cataclysm came, when the sky caught fire, they didn't run. They stepped sideways into a parallel reality, leaving only their material possessions behind. Every ancient culture has legends of sky gods or star people who vanished in flashes of light. The Hopi speak of the ant people who took them underground during the last world's destruction. The Quechua tell of the Viracocha who walked between worlds. Maybe these stories aren't metaphors. Maybe they're memories. The tools left behind in perfect order make more sense in this context. You don't need material objects if you've transcended material existence. Whatever happened to the builders? This discovery forces us to completely rewrite early American history. We've been told that before European contact, the Americas held only small, primitive societies. That complex civilization emerged first in the Middle East, then spread slowly to other regions. The Amazon chamber proves that narrative is wrong. The mother culture theory. Sophisticated societies existed in the Americas thousands of years before Mesopotamia or Egypt. They had astronomy advanced enough to create accurate star maps. They had engineering capable of building sealed vaults that survived 12,000 years. They had trade networks spanning continents. They had preservation technology we still don't fully understand. And they faced a disaster that nearly ended all life on Earth. Some researchers propose the mother culture theory. A single advanced maritime civilization existed during the Ice Age, before the oceans rose and coastlines were flooded. This culture had settlements across the globe, connected by ships. When the cosmic impact hit, survivors scattered to different regions, bringing their knowledge with them. That would explain why so many ancient sites separated by oceans show similar construction techniques, astronomical alignments, and flood myths. Could the Amazon site be a colony of this lost civilization? The symbols on the obsidian tools match symbols found at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey and Gunung Padang in Indonesia. How is that possible unless there was a global culture sharing knowledge? The golden trinkets. Among the artifacts recovered from the chamber were small metalwork pieces that look disturbingly aerodynamic. They have wings, fuselages, and vertical stabilizers. Archaeologists officially classify them as zoomorphic art, representing insects or fish. But aeronautical engineers who've examined them point out they have proper lift ratios and control surfaces. Put one in a wind tunnel and it generates lift like a modern airplane. If these people had flight, even primitive aircraft, then everything changes. A trade network spanning thousands of miles becomes practical. Maritime exploration becomes possible. A global civilization becomes plausible. The lost city wasn't just a city of gold, it was a city of knowledge, and we've barely scratched the surface. The warning for our time. Perhaps the most important aspect of this discovery is the warning. The people who built this chamber understood something we often forget. Civilizations fall, advanced societies collapse, and when they do, knowledge can be lost forever. They knew a cosmic disaster was coming. They tracked it in the sky with their astronomical observations. They prepared as best they could, building a vault to preserve the genetic foundation of their ecosystem. It wasn't enough to save them, but it was enough to save the knowledge that they existed. We face similar threats today: climate change, asteroid impacts, solar flares, pandemics. Any of these could trigger societal collapse within our lifetimes. How many modern people could build a shelter from scratch, grow food without industrial agriculture, preserve seeds, create fire without matches? We've become dependent on systems so complex that most of us don't understand how they work. If those systems fail, we'd be more helpless than people 12,000 years ago. The Amazon chamber is a message from the past. It says, civilizations are fragile. Prepare for disaster. Preserve knowledge. Save what matters. The sealed chamber in the Amazon has only been partially explored. The site is so remote, so difficult to reach, that researchers can only work there a few weeks per year. But what they've found so far rewrites human history. Complex societies existed in the Americas thousands of years earlier than we believed. They had knowledge we're only now rediscovering. And they left us a time capsule proving they existed, even though they knew their world was ending. How many more chambers are sealed beneath the Amazon rainforest? How many more cities are hidden under the canopy, waiting for litter to reveal them? The jungle holds secrets we've barely begun to uncover. And each discovery forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about how much we really know about our own past. Perhaps we're not the first advanced civilization. Perhaps we're just the latest in a cycle that's happened before and will happen again. The seeds are still preserved in that black pool. The star map is still painted on the wall outside. The tools are still laid out, waiting for hands that will never return. They left us a message. We were here. We built this. We knew. Remember us. What do you think happened to the builders? Are there more chambers waiting to be found? Let us know in the comments below. And subscribe for more discoveries that challenge everything we think we know about history.